lastly, okay, if you're thinking about buying a home, traditional home sale, why not try a short sale or foreclosure? We're going to find out the information on whether it's worth it or not worth it, what the pros and cons are.
Buying a home is one of the largest investments you will ever make in your entire life. So getting the house for the price you want is so important. One way folks do this is they buy a foreclosure or maybe a short sale. Jacques Munro from Munro Realty is here now to tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly of seeking those types of homes. Jacques, welcome. So let's start off. What's the difference between a short sale and a foreclosure?
Thank you, ladies, for having me on your show. Well, let's say the foreclosure can be purchased in a more reliable way than the short sale. Because the short sale, whereas the bank is involved in both transactions in some way, in a foreclosure, the bank is actually the seller. In a short sale, it's actually the owner of the property that's the seller, but really it's the bank that ultimately has the final say, because the seller is asking the lender to discount the note in order for them to sell. So they owe more on the property than the contract price.
So let's back up a little bit just to make sure everyone's clear. The short sale is the owner is selling it for a lot less than what they owe the bank.
That's correct.
So if they owe the bank $150,000, they're saying, hey, bank, we're not going to give you $50,000. Will you let me sell the bank this for $100,000?
That's correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody
Yeah, more or less.
that.
I mean, you have closing costs on top of that. But essentially, the seller doesn't really control when the closing takes place and is reliant on the bank to say, okay, well, yes, we'll approve the short sale and you can close, whenever you can close. So there's going to be a renegotiation. So the downside is, let's say that you're in a position where you need to close on a home in the next 30 days. The short sale typically is not the way you should go. Whereas a foreclosure, once the bank, basically, it's just like you're dealing with any other seller. If you wanted to contrast it to, let's say, a traditional sale, and by the way, before I do that, I'll say this. Your foreclosure or your REO property, bank-owned property, versus a short sale or traditional sale, all of them essentially you can purchase the same way. So typically, they're all offered through Armless. So you go onto MLS and you can negotiate these deals that way. But of the three, I would say the least reliable is the short sale, just because, again, you have to have a lot of flexibility and you really don't know whether you're going to have a deal at the end of the process, and you're not really sure when the closing date is going to be.
So you say flexibility. What do you mean? Elaborate on that.
What I mean is, let's say that you sold your house and you need to move into a new house in 30 days or 45 days. Short sale is probably not the way to go unless you have a rental or unless you have another property or really good friends that you can move into their house.
Is that because the sales drag out a long time? Is that what you mean?
It's possible, right. And the thing is not only are you dependent on the bank, but also you're dependent on the listing broker or the listing agent who are negotiating that deal, because your agent, so the buyer's agent, really isn't going to have any say whatsoever. So they're not going to be able to say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, did you get all of that required information into the bank or not? And so, really, and that's why it's pretty risky. Another thing, and what I would say is this, in 2009, 2010, you bet you could buy a lot of stuff and you could buy it at serious discounts. But the market is going up. And a lot of people are looking at these distressed properties too. So there's competition. So you're paying, pretty decent money to where it's almost not worth it for the inconvenience.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to ask you was, now with the market, and the market has gone up significantly.
That's right.
We're not back to 2004 home prices, but we're about 25% off, I would say.
I think we're closer than that. And I think it's 2006, and I think we're nearly there.
So with that being said, like you said, there's not many foreclosures or distressed properties on the market. What about short sales?
Well, this is just the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah,
okay.
they're both very limited. But I would say, you have, and there's one area that we haven't even spoke about at all, but buying a trustee sale at the courthouse steps. And the same thing too, you have a lot of competition. You used to be able to show up and really not have a tremendous amount of information, and pretty much, you'd be okay. In other words, where you really didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot of homework to really understand what the margins were. Pretty much all of the deals were no-brainer deals, if you could get them. Now, there's so much competition where a lot of these investors, I just spoke to one earlier today, where he's saying, okay, a 10% margin is okay with me. So,
Wow,
right.
that's not a big.
And there's a lot of
That's
risk.
a risk. That's a risk
and-
where it's not worth the return, don't you think?
I agree. I
Because
think
you could go into those houses and find out they're completely trashed.
a whole host of issues.
Right, and you have to
Absolutely.
buy them in cash, right?
You got to buy cash. So in other words, what happens is, there's a lot of competition. You can go down there, and the bank actually postpones the sale. So basically, you waste the whole day, going down waiting for a property that never comes up for bid. And then let's say that you basically overcome all the other competitions. Because a lot of these times people are not only buying for flips, they're also buying to hold, to rehab, to hold, and to rent out.
Right.
And so what that means is you're not getting the same kind of bargains. These guys are willing to pay a little bit more.
Okay, hold on. I don't want to cut you off.
Sure.
But you've got some questions here from our viewers piping in.
Sure.
Geez, it went down. Monica said, if we've done a short sale, should it be possible to purchase a home in the near future?
Absolutely. Speak to the lender about it. And depending on the type of loan, or typically it's 2 years from the previous short sale.
And isn't that part of the reason why the market's being driven up is because a lot of the people who were underwater or had gone through a short sale or foreclosure are now back in the
those
market?
7 years have gone by.
Absolutely right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then on top of that, the metropolitan Phoenix market, it's a pretty reliable market in its ups and downs. So in other words, other countries or other states in the country, you'll see kind of a steady upward, appreciation. But the Metro Phoenix market has always been.
Okay, so for those of you that are listening, he's moving his finger
Right.
up and down, very extreme. So showing that it's really jagged market. It's very volatile.
And the reason why is because it's the quality of life. We were just speaking where, a lot of
Yeah, we
people
have good
from,
quality of
the
life.
East Coast and the West Coast, they're coming to settle here because you really get good value.
Yeah,
So
you do.
speaking of smart shopping,
Right.
this is the place for that.
Yeah. Okay. So another question. We've got actually a lot of people asking questions of you today, Jacques, because you're such an expertise. So Alicia asked, what will the market be like in a year? We want to hold off till then. What are your thoughts on that?
Gosh, I wish.
I've got my opinion on that, but I'm not the
Are you
expert.
talking
She
about
should've-
holding off on selling or holding off on buying?
I interpreted that she was buying.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, I would say this. She should have Facebooked you or texted you earlier today, and I would have brought my crystal ball. But kidding aside.
Sorry, you're so funny, Jacques.
And I'm teasing. What I would say is I would buy now, because we don't know what the market is going to do, but we do know that or expect interest rates to go up. So that's going to affect when Alicia, is that her name? Mm-hmm. When Alicia's going to, what you can afford. So if you can afford something now, buy now. And also, it's
Yeah,
our
because the prices
prediction-
are not.
Yeah.
So what you're basically saying is that you can't predict, but you
Right.
don't think the prices are going to go down and
That's right.
interest rates are going to go up.
Yeah, tongue in cheek, I say that. I can't predict, but
Right.
the expectation is prices are going to go up, interest rates are going up.
Right.
So I would buy now.
What if
Yeah.
you're looking at selling? Should you sell now or should you hold out? And
Geez, I don't know. It really depends because, the market is pretty strong now. A couple of months ago, there was a little bit of a lull, and before that, there was a little bit of a lull. But I think, and that's what I was just mentioning to Daphne. In certain markets, and not across the board and every price point and so forth. So it really depends, really, to get very specific. But I think that the pricing is very, very close to the height of the market.
well, I will. I actually, on my way over here, I had just seen that a house in my little complex just went on the market, and I live in a patio home, so these are very, all the same type of patio homes. I bought my patio home a year and a half ago for $122,000.
Smart girl.
It is now this exact same model is on the market for $175.
Right
Yeah.
on. Give me 5.
So I just want to put that into perspective for
Made some
people,
money.
like how much the
Yeah,
market
that's gone up.
is drastically increasing.
And so it just depends. What you're trying to do. If you're going to sell to buy something more, now is the time. Yeah, you bet, because you'll really maximize the benefit on a home that's more expensive. But if it's just to sell and to go on a nice vacation, then maybe the priority isn't enough. Maybe you hold it.
Well, and also think about if you are selling, if you're looking to buy another home, you're going to end up paying more. So,
Well, that's just
all
what I'm saying,
relative.
though.
Yeah, it's all
If the
relative.
market continues to go up, though, you are better served to, make maybe less money on your home now, because you're going to pay less than, let's say, you wait a year, 3 years, 5 years.
Got it.
And again, once again, we're back to the crystal ball territory with, who knows, but generally speaking and historically, while we'll have crashes, when we come up, I mean, the next crash seldom goes down to the previous crash.
So back to kind of the foreclosures and the short sales.
Sure.
Is there a secret? Like, is there a secret sauce to like score one of those? Like, what advice would you give people if they're looking for one of those deals?
I would say you don't limit to only those deals because you're doing yourself a disservice. I would say don't exclude them and do your search in concert with them. So I would say, you can even search out fix-up properties in distress, because these are all kind of, for the most part, where you're going to get if you're buying bank-owned properties or if you're buying short sale properties. So in other words, the seller doesn't care anymore, or the bank certainly doesn't care. So the property is not going to be well maintained. It's going to be in disrepair. So why limit yourself to those? There are other situations where you have probate sales, you have, just people that have neglected their property sales. Maybe these are rental properties, whatever the situation is. So basically, look at the area where you want to be and just do a good search and scour that. If you're saying, okay, well, my time is limited, I just want to go to properties that are distressed properties, then you can do fix-up, you can do REO, and you can do short sale. Let's say that you do find a good REO property, chances are there's going to be competition. So, and I think we spoke about this on one of the previous shows. You want to put your best foot forward a little bit if there's competition. So I would say one of the things that doesn't cost you anything to do is to put a lot of earnest money down. It shows you're strong. If you're in a position, let's say, where you have cash available or you can borrow against your home to have cash, you're a cash buyer now. Sometimes the banks will like to see cash. And
Cash is king.
Cash is king.
Right.
And so much so that, even a lower offer may take a priority from a bank's point of view, saying, hey, well, even though all transactions are cash when it comes to closing, but there are so many different reasons why a finance deal will fall through. So example, maybe appraisal issue,
Right.
maybe,
Many different reasons.
Absolutely. Whereas cash offers a quick close, a lot of earnest money, and then you can worry about refinancing afterwards. So that's a way that you can compete. Although the second way, I think, is a little bit more onerous than just the first, the earnest money.
Okay. Well, Jacques, thank you so much for Munro Realty. We always appreciate you. And if you want to get a hold of Jacques Munro, you can always get a hold of him. It's Munro Realty, and you can find him on the smartshoppershow.com under sponsors page, or you can just give him a call. Just Google Jacques Munro.